I'll play the role of Bethany for project development. So.
Hi, so I'm just going to talk really quickly about some of the data sets that are requested most frequently, and as Mark already said, we'll see certain data sets that are going to be asked for over and over and over again, but there are so many data sets available. This was one question that came over the break. Some people have very specific ideas of data sets that they want to use, so they come to us asking for those data. They already know it, and that's great. You can go from there, but some others have more of a topic of interest, and then we can help you out identifying the data that you might need. And actually, Amber is going to touch on that and how you can search for what's been done in certain areas, or even using some data sets. And this can be an iterative process. If you come with a general idea, we can start from there and then maybe fund you some data sets, and then you can you don't have to know exactly what you want to do on your first try. We can work on it. We'll be happy to help. So this data set overview that I'm going to go over, it's based on the annual research report from the Center of Economic Studies, the ones from the last 5 or 6 years. And this is actually a great resource to see what's being done in the RDCs and in the Center of Economic Studies. If you go to the reports, you'll find tons of information. And if they talk about one data set that you're interested, they usually will go in great detail. So the trend in the past 5 years has been about between 20 and 40 new RDC projects are approved every year. This is counting all of the RDCs. And about 50% of them are using Census data sets. This is over the last 5 years. And this was more before, but as the NCHS data and the AHRQ data comes in, they have been taking more and more of the proposals. 35 to 40 journal papers are published every year coming from RDC research, and another 40 working papers are available. So there is a lot of research coming out of the RDC. And most of you are familiar with the main demographic data sets. Those are sort of the obvious options, and we are very lucky to have Mark Fossett being very familiar with using Census, and we have Amber who's also used the ACS. So if you're interested in these data sets, we'll be able to provide a lot of help working with them. So they are the decennial census right now. The RDC has from 1970 to 2000, and they'll soon have the 1960 we're hoping for, and they're even working or thinking on making available the 1940 from the 1940, but I mean, that will take more time.
And 2010 coming online.
Well, in the RDC also soon? Okay, so that's great actually. But we already have the American Community Survey from, I think, up to 2011, it's available now. So from 1996, and as you know, that this comes to substitute the decennial long form, even if it's not identical. I think most of the areas are covered, and there is also the issues of small area estimation, but that's kind of a door into the RDC, trying to do a small area estimation. That's a justification to use the American Community Survey. And an advantage of the ACS is that if you are looking at locations that are 65,000 or more in population, you will have data available every year. So that's, I mean, the disadvantage is you want to look at small areas, but if you want a larger area, you will have continuous information, and that's great. Another demographic data set that is good for. Oh, sorry.
I know I'm getting a little bit into the detail, but you know that is repeat data that is scale data.
I think the main metropolitan areas are done every year, aren't they? The big ones?
It's not a panel.
Yeah,
it's a cross section each year.
Adds to the whole.
Yeah. So you could do you could follow cohorts synthetically, but you don't follow an actual cohort.
So the CPS is available, specifically the March supplement, and what the March supplement has is the annual social and economic information added to the main labor and income information. This data set, it's available because it's used in a lot of crosswalks. It's been linked to a lot of other data sets for the information that it has. And something that makes it also really good is that it has a really high response rate for a survey. So it's a good quality data. The business data sets that are mostly used are going to be the longitudinal business database. And if you want to help with this, I recommend to go to Jeremy because, as well as Nathaniel, they are more familiar with these data sets. They are much more complex and more specific. And as it was mentioned, these are not actual surveys. These are basically linkage of existing administrative data with other survey data. So it's really, really interesting data. It's very complex, and it's hard to get access to it. I mean, the proposal is going to be really, going to have to be really detailed and going to be really looked after. But we'll help as much as we can to get through this. So what some researchers have done is that they tied these data sets to other projects so they can start working in another piece of their project while they wait for authorization in a different part of it that might take more to get access to. As I said, it's one of the most frequently requested data sets just because it has such rich information. And you will have key economic data and employment variation. You will be able to see opening and closing of firms. And this is the data set that you already mentioned. And I'll go back and forth. This has been constructed the same way. This comes from the report. What they did for the longitudinal employer and household dynamics project, basically, is to integrate firm data with employment data and then household survey data. And they put it all together and made it available. And since it's so detailed, it's only available through the RDC or if you work for them at the Center of Economic Research. It's not rare that a lot of the projects that deal with this have been used for validation of the survey data that was integrated into it. So there has been a lot of comparison on how employment data is answering, say, the American Community Survey versus what they know from administrative data. And that's a really good entryway for statistician and methods people to try to sort of validate answers. The same has happened with the CPS. CPS does not have very good data in sort of unemployment that is not formal. If you don't have like long-term employment, but you are doing temping and things like that, you are less likely to report it in a survey. But there will be administrative data for it. And then it's been used also to do that. So the program was first established in 1998. It's a partnership between Census and state data. And it becomes housed by the CES in 2008. So most better quality data on this data set is going to be available from 2000, but there are historical back data. It's just not going to be as uniform across the nation. It just varies a lot by state, just based on what the states were willing or able to share. As I mentioned, it integrates existing administrative data and census service data to study the interaction between firms and workforce. And this is the first linked employer and employee data program in the US, and that's what makes it so valuable. There have been a lot of products coming from this effort. So there is the origin, destination, employment, and statistics. And that information has been used to inform on the map. So if you are familiar with the Census webpage, you are able to actually map reporting of where workers live versus where they work. And you are able to build reports, and that's based on the LEHD. And then there is a quarterly workforce indicator that's built also based on the survey. And those data at the establishment level are only available through the RDC. So, if you want to work with this data, you're probably going to have to go through us.
Anyone here interested in LEHD? Okay, because you'll absolutely want to have a conversation with us because LEHD is embroiled in some administrative, the states have ability to, they have a voice. This is not a good thing. Huh? It's their data, yeah. But anyway, so you'll want to learn. Jeremy knows something about it. Bethany knows a little bit more, and then it's a soap opera. You'll want to find out more about.
Another data that is requested very often is the annual survey of manufacturers. The data is available since 1973 up to 2009, probably 2011. This changes all the time as data becomes available all the time. So that's why you want to check with Bethany when you want to use something and where you are working on your proposal. And this is basically in the Census economic data we get every 5 years when the Census of economic data gets done. There is a census of manufacturers as part of it. But then in between years, you get the annual survey of manufacturers, and you're able to see all the trending yearly. So this is a great resource, and this is why this one is requested so often. And then for the health-related data, all the demographic, the census and the ACS does have health information, and CPS does have usually supplemental survey years where they add health information and expenditures, health insurance, or for sickness. You will find this in many of the demographic and even the economic surveys. But then in 2007, the National Center of Health Statistics and the Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality signed an agreement with the Center of Economic Studies to make their data available in the RDC. So now we have more specialized health surveys. The access process is going to be very different, and Mark will talk about it when you see the proposal. And there are pros and cons about it, but some data is going to be very specific from the health surveys. So the main survey from the NCHS is basically the National Health and Interview Survey. It's one of their oldest survey, and it's the sampling frame from many of the other surveys, which makes it linkable to other surveys if you're interested in more than one topic or in linking different things that are going on. And this is the way that the US kind of tracks their population health. It has a lot of information in population health, and it oversamples a lot of the minorities, especially those who are 65 years and older and part of a minority group. That is aging is an area of interest here, well, in all the world, but in the US big right now. There is the way that it's done. This is when they go and sample a household, there is a double sampling process. So they get an adult and then a child in each household. So that makes it very interesting if you want to sort of study in household relationships.
Maybe you mentioned this. Is this part of the Bureau of Census data, or is it separate? Who owns this data?
This is NCHS, although Census sometimes fills a lot of their surveys.
Is this sort of accessible through here?
Yes, definitely.
So originally, NCHS has their own RDC.
Yeah.
It's in Bethesda, or what is it? Anyway, it's on the East Coast. They agreed to let the census host their data sets on their servers, and then they became available through the RDC network. But if you're working with NCHS data, the protocols are easier. The guidelines and the criteria for project approval are easier. And I'll talk about that in a minute.
So actually, using this data has become really popular. At this point, about 50% of the proposals are done using NCHS data, or at least health-related data using the other agency. Then the Enhance is another data set that is used a lot. 50% of the projects that are approved here in the RDC are done using NCHS data. Yes, NCHS has a ton of different surveys, and you have to keep in mind that you are using surveys. So even though you have access to a larger sample, you still might run on sampling size issues. And these are things that you go over when you're planning your proposal.
Like for us, these projects are getting in faster because they're less complicated in terms of the review process. The criteria that you have to satisfy are a little bit more relaxed. We'll say a little bit more about it later. There's like 3 levels, and this is the easiest level.
They actually have a virtual RDC where you can do remote access. You can't do the same thing you can do here, but you can kind of do the first level where you can do this in your office to find out feasibility. And then if you afterwards go down, you can come here and do it.
I think they just lost their grant.
Oh, the
Yeah, that's
Is
the
it coming
Cornell
up, right?
Virtual RDC.
I thought the Cornell virtual RDC.
that's the Cornell. That's the Census Bureau.
Yeah, they had a separate one. Where
NCHS offers remote data access,
NCHS.
but that's not through us. That's something that you have to
do
negotiate
it,
with
you do
them.
feasibility, but that means when you're here, you know what you want.
That is,
Yeah.
that is true. And for the NCHS proposals, even though they are simpler to get approved, you do have to know what you want because you are only gonna get what you ask for. You won't get the whole data set as you do with census data. So you have to be much more careful. So here is the Enhance, and then you do have health and nutrition information, and the Enhance has genetic and biological samples, and some of the genetic information you are able to get through the RDC, and I'm sure it's a probably much more strict review process than it would be for, say, the National Health and Interview Survey, but I mean, this is great data. And there are a lot of grants now for looking at genetic information. The national, we actually, a great resource to see how these surveys are used is just following the seminar presentations that we have every semester. And this semester, we had specifically presentations of people using the NHANES, and we also had people using the National Survey of Family Growth specifically, and we had some other people using the business data. And this is if you are not very familiar with the data set, this is a great shortcut. Usually the researchers who have been really generous sharing all the painful process. I mean, and it really will shorten everything for you. They have been really, really specific, and they are really helpful if you approach them after presentations on how they went about it, justifying or even just dealing with the data, and suggesting variables that you might want to include and things that you want or don't want to do. So that's, I mean, following the presentation is really a great resource. This National Survey of Family Growth, it really focuses on family formation and fertility. So you will see a lot of information, and it goes back to the 1970s of marriage, divorce, pregnancy, infertility. You have information on contraception, and you have a bunch of other health outcomes. And with all these surveys, you will see specific topics every year. So there is a lot going on. And part of what you're able to access through the RDC is the ACASI data. A lot of the health information is gonna be very sensitive, so you never know what you are getting. So here again, if you are a methods person and you are really curious to see how this makes a difference, this is another way of access to the data, to the health data, just justifying that you want to see whether we're getting the same health responses when we do through a computer than when you have a person interviewing and asking you about STDs or contraception or abortion, things that you just won't feel comfortable enough to share with somebody else. You get a lot of contextual data also through the RDC and interviewer variables. So there is a lot of sort of opportunities here to look at methods, the survey methods, research, and things like that. With NCHS, you don't have, and Mark will go over this, you don't have to just benefit NCHS. It just has to be of scientific interest. So in a way, that makes it much simpler. It just has to be a good question for you to answer. And we have vital statistics data here, available here, so you can request birth certificates and death certificates. I mean, it's not as simple as that, but there is also a proposal to go through, but you will have access to the NAPSIS, the National Association of Public Health System and Informatics, Statistical and Informatics Systems. They are the ones who manage all of the.
Those are not like vital statistics. You can just count births and deaths. You can't actually.
They are linkable. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big deal to do it, but the linked mortality file is exactly that. You can link.
But it links birth and mortality. So I'm saying, can I link the mortality file to my Medicaid?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
There's
Or
in some cases
social
you can do that without the RDC. You can, if you have well-identified people from a survey you conducted, you can contract with NCHS to see if they're alive, or if they died, you'll get information off the death record.
Contract with that. I guess that was you like.
Yeah, well, but
or you can offer them an outcome.
that's if you're bringing in your own data and doing your own match. If you're using existing data sets, the PIC allows.
And I think one thing with the RDC is that there are no black and white rules. This changes all the time, and you might get approved, and then the next proposal might get declined. So also, this is very fluid. But the better and the clearer the proposal is, the easier it will be to go through. NCHS is going to be the merging. It's going to do the merging for you of everything that you ask for it to be merged, which is one of the reasons why people request RDC, to be able to merge either surveys or to merge contextual data to surveys, or outside data to survey or census or whatever. So NCHS won't give you any direct identifiers, not even to work with them in the RDC. So what they will do is they will use those identifiers to do the merging. They will strip them, and then they will make the data available to you in the RDC. And then some examples of linked data examples that the NCHS data has done are the National Health and Interview Survey has been merged with mortality data. And then the enhanced has also been merged with mortality data, and then it has also been merged with Medicare enrollment and claim data. And there are a lot of merge, and usually once one of these merge has been done, it's generally available through the RDC. I mean, you will still have to go through an approval process, but it's much easier to get access to those data. Finally, there is the Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality, and at this point, about 10% of the proposals use the MEP data. I'm not sure about this, but my understanding is that as of right now, there are no clear plans to do more of these surveys, but I don't know if there might be approved in the future. So what we have here right now, it's probably what is about the medical expenditure panel and survey data, although there are fairly recent data up to 2010. So there are two main components from the medical expenditure panel survey, the insurance component and the household component. From the insurance component, you will get that data on health insurance provided by the employer. So you get size of health insurance, what benefits they provide, which are the premiums that people pay, and which are the characteristics of each of these employers that provide the insurance. But you also have access to a household component, and then there is also a link file of the insurance and the household component. So this is really helpful if you want to understand health insurance and health expenditures. These are some of the main data. If you go to our webpage, you will see much more data sets, as well as the webpage for the Center of Economic Studies. And actually, Amber is gonna show you how you can be really specific on your search of data sets and formal research in the data in the RDC.